Hey guys, welcome back. So this is part 2 of what we started last week, and that is talking about how long should it take to see performance with paid ad spend. So we talked about Facebook last week. This week we're going to talk about Google, and we're going to break Google down into its individual products because we do find that a product like branded search performs very differently and takes different amount of time to perform than something like a YouTube strategy. And YouTube can be used for something like top of funnel traffic or bottom of funnel traffic. So we're going to try to break these things down so that you understand how long should you wait or how much should you spend before you start reacting. And if you're working with a media buyer or an agency, you'll be able to kind of manage this a little bit better and understand, okay, if they're saying just wait, it needs to optimize, we need to just keep spending here, are they really on track or are they not? So we'll dive in here to some of the things that we've learned at Rubato. The first thing is, there are a lot of things to consider, just like on the Facebook episode last week. And one of the things that I heard myself keep saying is, but before we dive in, we need to talk about this other thing. So there are several things to think about, and I encourage you to go ahead and go back and listen to that episode if you haven't, even if you're not a heavy Facebook advertiser, because there are a lot of concepts there that are important, like what is your average order value? How much spend does it take before you should have a sale? So if you're selling a product that costs $10,000, you're going to need to spend more than somebody that has a product that costs $10, for example. So those kind of nuances are very important to think through as you're spending on paid media. The first thing that I want to cover today is if you're starting Google Ads for the first time ever, and this is so different than if you're running, tens of thousands of dollars per month. It's a very different ballgame. So if you're just getting started on paid ads, you really need to think through a few things first. So the first thing is, what is your product? Are people searching for it? And I know that sounds silly because we're talking about Google search, and obviously people search for everything, but we do find that sometimes we have clients that have a really innovative or niche product that people probably really aren't searching for yet. They might be searching for a solution to a problem that this product or service can fulfill, but they might not know exactly what they're searching for. And the longer you get up in that buyer's funnel, where the user is not necessarily even aware of what you're offering or what it is, or if it's very innovative, then it's probably going to take you a little bit more time to really convert those users, even if they're pretty targeted keywords. So that's a really just interesting thing to think through on the front end. The second thing is, do you have competitors out there? And almost everybody has competitors, but people have competitors at different levels. Do you have really strong, harsh competitors, or do you have people that are sort of doing the same thing but not too much? So those answers to those questions are really important because you might, first of all, see cost per clicks that are really, really high. If you're in a very competitive space, we were working actually with a business that was in the financial retirement business, and they have so much competition in these massive firms, and so them coming in with their small budgets relative to millions and millions of dollars a year, it's difficult to play well on Google Ads. So somebody else that has a small product that fulfills a particular need that not so many other people might be bidding on the exact same keywords, that's going to be a lot easier to handle. So there's a couple of tools that you can use actually to even spy on your competitors and see how much money they're spending on Google, to see maybe where cost per clicks are. One that we use a lot is called SpyFu. And so I do encourage you to go ahead and do some research beforehand on where is the market. This is very different than Facebook ads, where Facebook gives you a CPM price, and whereas the CPM price can vary greatly, the overall cost per click on Facebook is typically pretty stable. If you're getting cost per clicks over $3, then you might be doing something wrong, or you're just very, very targeted traffic. But on the Google side, there's industries that have cost per clicks up to $50, $75, $100. And so, whereas that's not necessarily the norm with, small to medium-sized e-commerce brands like we work with, it is important to understand that the auction on Google is different, and in ways it's much more directly competitive than Facebook. So what are these things really having to do with how long does it take to see performance? Well, if you don't have a lot of competition for certain keywords and you have very targeted keywords that you know, if somebody searches for that, they're going to be aware of your solution or your product, and they're going to see the value immediately and want to buy or want to interact, whether that's a lead form or whatever the action point is there. If that's the case, then performance can be a pretty fast turnaround time. You can see how many clicks come in. If you have an expected conversion rate of, let's say, 5 to 10%, and you drive 10 to 20 clicks, you should see a conversion. It's really that simple. If you don't, you might want to check how people are actually going through your funnel and see, okay, are these people just at, step 1, step 2? Maybe they haven't added to cart yet, but they spent a lot of time on the product page views. Fine, then you can keep spending. But if you see that people are really getting stuck and that you've driven 20, 30, 50 clicks and nobody has added to cart and nobody's purchased yet from search traffic, it's such a low portion of the funnel in the grand scheme of marketing. It's somebody already searching for this. And if you're in that bucket of this person knows what your product or solution is, whenever they see it, they'll understand the value immediately to how it connects with their problem, that's going to be something that you should expect pretty immediate results there. If you're on the other side of this and you have a product or service that's very competitive, or that you are not completely convinced that somebody will know what it is or know how it can solve their problem without further education, then we recommend going ahead and getting started with some really targeted keywords and letting the account warm up over time. Google's algorithm will help you. It will help your account to spend more efficiently, and ultimately, if you're able to spend on automated bidding, which sometimes the reach is so narrow there that it doesn't make sense in the beginning, but if it could eventually, or it will eventually make sense to run on automated bidding, more than likely, once the algorithm gets to know you. And this process, I find, usually takes between 2 to 4 months if the budgets are pretty healthy. If your budgets are a little bit lower, then it is going to be a longer period of time. We see even 6 months or more sometimes. If you're spending really low, $15, $20 a day budgets on Google, it takes some time, but you will get there eventually, and the algorithm will get to know you, and you will start finding a spot in the auction for those competitive spaces. And if you're building a brand with an innovative product, then as more and more customers start to get to know you, you'll find those brand searches will start growing and people will start being aware of your product. If you're already spending significantly on Google and your account's already warmed up and you're listening to this video wondering how long does it take for performance to really come in, then you've probably changed strategies. You've either changed agencies, changed media buyers, changed overall account structure. There's something probably that's changed. Or perhaps you've seen kind of a downward spiral of performance and you're wondering, how long it will take to kind of get back to that place that you were. So this really comes down to Google's specific products in our experience. So if you're running a branded search campaign, then this should be immediate. There really shouldn't be any time period there. If somebody's searching for you and they're not buying, there's something wrong with the flow more than likely, or the funnel. But if you're running on non-branded search, for example, and you've had a big strategy change, this can take some time to work out. And typically, I like to look at a 30-day period. If I'm changing a structure completely on non-brand search, I give Google 30 days. Now, this does not mean without touching the account. It doesn't mean without optimizing out outliers. But I do find that Google's algorithm is much slower than Facebook's algorithm. And if you start trying to change too many things at once, it's going to get confused. So Google's algorithm works a lot like if you make one change to the ad copy, then the click-through rate slowly goes up. Then Google kind of indexes your click-through rate, and that click-through rate can affect your quality score, and that quality score can affect your CPM or your placement in the auctions. And then, eventually we get to this point where we're actually getting ranked for better quality inventory, and those conversion rates are going up, and then performance starts coming in. So there's some early indicators of that success. Again, if you see those click-through rates go up, you can be almost sure that overall, so long as your bounce rate isn't also going up there, you can be almost sure that eventually that will kind of work its way into performance, and I would look at that over about a 2 to 4 week period of time. Now, if we're looking at discovery or display or YouTube, top of funnel, meaning that you are targeting new people that haven't seen your brand before, there's 2 different ways to look at this. The first way is a direct performance, and this is difficult to do, honestly. If you're able to drive direct ROAS and a return on your investment from these top of funnel placements, that's awesome. Most advertisers run them at a loss, and then with the overall system of Google Ads with brand traffic, with DSA, with shopping, these other areas, and perhaps even Facebook retargeting, for example, kind of capturing this overall funnel of people that you're pouring in from the top. But you should start seeing these trends within 30 days as well. If you start shocking your account with a lot of YouTube spend, for example, you should start seeing that trend into the overall performance of the account within 30 days. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to this. The first one is if your product is a really high ticket item, like $10,000 item, and again, it takes you a lot of time to get that data. Well, that could be an issue with getting that data within 30 days. You might have to wait 90 days to really see the overall system working. The one thing to keep in mind here is how much does your product cost compared to your budget. So if you have a $30,000 a month budget, but you're selling a $10,000 product and you want to drive $5,000 cost per sales, well, that means that you will drive 6 conversions within a month, and that is like nothing to Google. So until you can get up in those, double-digit, triple-digit conversions, don't expect a lot of power from the algorithm. So you might have to spend on a much longer period of time to be able to really warm up the algorithm in those particular cases. And there's a huge scale, obviously, of cost per product. And so wherever you are in the scale, you can factor that into how long should it really take. If you have a $5 product you're selling on Google, which is not easy to do either, but if you are making that work, then that kind of feedback loop is amazing. Your conversion rate and what you're spending can really be augmented based on just that formula of getting that feedback loop up. We've talked about top of funnel now with YouTube and discovery campaigns. We've talked about the mid funnel, which is the non-brand search. And now let's talk about some of the lower funnel campaigns. So we have things like DSA, smart shopping, obviously branded search. And then we also have retargeting campaigns like YouTube, display, discover, really retargeting of any kind on the platform. And I like to be quite aggressive with these types of campaigns for our clients. Our clients don't have millions of dollars of budget who just want to brand. Our clients are definitely looking for that performance. And in my mind, if something doesn't perform at least within a 30-day period, we're gonna cut that. And if we don't see it trending in the right direction after about 14 days, somewhere in the 2-week range, we're gonna go ahead and probably cut it, because there's other options in most cases where we could spend that budget profitably. So for example, if we're trying to test out a display retargeting campaign, yes, maybe this thing optimizes down in 2 to 3 months, but we don't wanna leave that live for that amount of time if it's not driving conversions. One quick thing to note on retargeting is we do find that view through conversions can be huge. So don't just look at the conversions that it's driving in the regular conversions column. Go ahead and add in the columns, and then you go into conversions, and then you can go to view through conversions, and then you can see of people who are seeing your ad who are then converting. I like to be pretty aggressive when it comes to these lower funnel campaigns, because I know they have to be the foundation for the overall account. So I'm not going to leave, for example, a display retargeting campaign live for 60, 90 days to see if it optimizes down if I don't see it really trending in the right direction within at least 30 days. I sometimes cut campaigns as early as 14 days. This is a little bit trigger happy, but for our clients, again, usually there's other places that we can spend their budget that are working better. And if we're in a really testing and exploratory space, fine, maybe we'll leave those live for longer to see. But usually if you're just looking for straight performance, if you don't see trends within 14 days and pretty positive trends moving into the 30-day mark, we would go ahead and cut these items. One thing to look for on display, discovery, and YouTube campaigns is the view through conversions. So we have definitely been guilty before of looking at that conversion column and seeing that there's no conversions and kind of leaving out this other aspect, which is there are people that are looking at these ads, seeing them, getting these images burned in their mind, or looking at a YouTube video, not wanting to stop what they're looking at that moment to go check it out. But they're definitely going back later and converting. And you can see these conversions in the view through conversions column. The last thing to talk about today is how long does it take to actually scale a Google campaign. Now scale it can be anything to anyone, right? But we find that typically within about a 6 to 8 month period of time, we're able to significantly increase client budgets, no matter where they start on Google, imagining that they're not already spending $500,000 a month on Google. So when we're taking on a new account, a brand new account, usually it takes us about 2 months to get up to that first notch where we're really starting to expand into some non-brand keywords, and we're beginning to launch DSA campaigns now that the account has some data. We have that core brand campaign going, and then from that 2 month mark, we're able to move into the next phase, which is adding in some of those top of funnel campaigns, going a little bit more broad on the non-brand campaign, adding in YouTube. We love YouTube. It's such a good top of funnel strategy. And then from there, you just slowly start scaling your budgets, and sometimes we're even launching discovery campaigns as even more top of funnel traffic. And this overall system, then we find that once you have that many parts in the system of Google, that it starts just naturally being a little bit more scalable. And that's just due to building up this funnel and to also the algorithm really understanding who your customers are. Across all of Google's different types of products, we see a lot of benefit from letting Google get to know us on their different platforms. Now, maybe that's just Google prioritizing people that are spending on their different platforms. It could be, but I definitely think there's also an algorithmic component to that. So this whole process, again, usually takes somewhere between 6 to 8 months. If a client already has a really nice base, I find that we can do it in 2 to 3 months, so long as we don't find any major issues with the flow or with the page load speeds. That's a big thing on Google. It's also huge on Facebook, but especially on Google, we find that if your page isn't loading up, people are going to abandon that. But assuming that we don't find any of those things, somewhere between 2 to 3 months to really gather scale. That's all we've got for today. So hopefully you enjoyed this 2-part series. Again, it's something that I hear all the time. How long should I wait? How long should I just keep spending? It feels a little out of control. And hopefully this shows you that whereas there are these longer periods of time that you need to kind of wait and let things settle in and let things grow, you should see early trend lines of success in the right direction, or early indicators of success like those front-end metrics. So thank you so much for coming today. We'll see you next week.